You're watching continuous coverage here on WION of the American airstrikes on Syria. Now, urging Russia and Iran to step aside from Syrian crisis, US President Donald Trump ordered military strikes against the regime of President Bashar al-Assad over suspected chemical attack in eastern Ghouta's Douma town. Trump announced the strikes were conducted in coordination with France and the United Kingdom. Trump said the purpose of the strikes is to establish a strong deterrent against the production, spread and use of chemical weapons. Now, loud explosions lit up the skies over Syria's capital, Damascus. According to U.S. General, facilities in Damascus were allegedly storing sarin gas.
My fellow Americans, a short time ago, I ordered the United States Armed Forces to launch precision strikes on targets associated with the chemical weapons capabilities of Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. A combined operation with the armed forces of France and the United Kingdom is now underway. We thank them both.
U.S. Defense Minister James Mattis has called the strikes a one-time event and said there are no additional attacks planned.
Tonight separately demonstrates international resolve to prevent chemical weapons from being used on anyone under any circumstance in contravention of international law. I want to emphasize that these strikes are directed at the Syrian regime. In conducting these strikes, we have gone to great lengths to avoid civilian and foreign casualties. But it is a time for all civilized nations to urgently unite in ending the Syrian civil war by supporting the United Nations-backed Geneva peace process.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Theresa May of the United Kingdom has also reacted to the airstrikes against Bashar al-Assad's regime.
This evening, I have authorised British armed forces to conduct coordinated and targeted strikes to degrade the Syrian regime's chemical weapons capability and deter their use. We are acting together with our American and French allies. In Douma last Saturday, a chemical weapons attack killed up to 75 people, including young children, in circumstances of pure horror. The fact of this attack should surprise no one.
And Ambassador Arun Singh joins me live from New Delhi. Good morning, Ambassador Singh. Good to have you back on WION. Now, I want to begin by asking you for your initial reaction to the latest American airstrikes on Syria and, more importantly, its implications for India given its stake that we have in the region.
So I think there are many factors at play here. The US, Europe have said repeatedly that they cannot accept any kind of use of chemical weapons because since the First World War, when they were used extensively and there were a large number of deaths resulting from that, there has been a certain approach in the international context to the use of chemical weapons. And the spokesman of the Ministry of External Affairs also had a few days ago said that India is against the use of any kind of chemical weapons anywhere by anyone. So that position is clear. Now, in this particular case, once the US and others assessed that there was, from their point of view, use of chemicals in that attack, chemical weapons, they needed to show for their own international credibility that they were taking some action. In the particular context of President Trump, he has had a political compulsion to show that he is different from President Obama. And therefore, since President Obama had refrained from any such action in 2013, President Trump feels that he makes a political point by reacting to such use or their perception of such use when it happens. And you may recall that last year, exactly about a year ago, when they had assessed that there was use of similar weapons, they had launched missile strikes in Syria. Now, in this particular case, the additional factor is that they have coordinated closely with the British and French, which hadn't happened a year ago. For the British, again, it becomes a very particular context, because with Brexit happening, Britain needs to show that in the international context, it remains an important and useful ally for the United States. And therefore, for them, for their own reason, it was important to show a partnership with the US effort. In addition, as you know, Britain has been saying that for a couple of weeks that there has been use of chemicals targeting someone on British soil. And therefore, given that they have come out strongly against what they perceive as use of chemicals against a person on British soil by, in their perception, a foreign country, they again needed to show that they were taking some action. But I would also like to draw attention to the comment that the US Secretary of Defense, Mr. Mattis, made, that this was targeted, from their point of view, specifically against the Syrian government. They have said that they have tried to avoid civilian casualties, and particularly that they have tried to avoid casualties to any foreign presence there. So I think they are trying to signal to Russia and to Iran that even though they have taken this action, they would hope and expect that there should not be any particular reaction or retaliation from Russia and Iran, so that it is targeted, they have conveyed their message, and they hope it does not escalate. So much will now depend on how Russia reacts, because it has a very strong presence on the ground. It has been supportive of the government of President Assad, and it will certainly see what the US has done as a challenge to the effort it is making in Syria. Also, the Organization of Prevention of Use of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW, had authorized a team to go to Syria to assess whether chemicals were used in that attack, whether there was use of any kind of a chemical weapon, and without attributing responsibility, but to assess the fact of use. And that team is yet to visit. And at the same time, in the Security Council, Russia had blocked a resolution that would have sent a team to try and assess responsibility for that attack. So it's a very complex situation, and I think the US, France, and UK probably felt that they needed to show action for their own international credibility. Russia had said that there was no use of chemical weapons by the government of President Assad, and therefore they would see certainly that their challenge to what their presence, their effort on the ground. Russian officials have said that this action will have consequences. Now we have to really see in what manner the reaction comes and whether there is an escalation or is just a one-shot attempt.
Indeed, Ambassador Singh, you make a number of valid points there. But before I go any further, I want to pick on the one point you mentioned about credibility. Now, President Trump, not so long ago, 4 days ago in fact, committed himself to striking or hitting out at Syria. And we were waiting for that moment to come, and it came earlier today. Do you think, would you describe the latest airstrikes as a face saver for Donald Trump personally, because it committed himself and the Americans needed to show, to deliver on his words?
No, I wouldn't say face saver for President Trump as such, but I think one, to maintain what they see as international credibility for certain positions they have taken, and for President Trump to project that he is different from President Obama, and that while President Obama had not taken any action, he has taken action. Because I would not see it as face saver, because once he made the commitment that action would happen, it was clear that they would come out with some kind of a response, because a year ago they had done exactly that. So I would look at it more as an attempt to maintain the international credibility of their position.
Now, while you say that we are still waiting and to hear from the Russian side, the Iranians and the other players involved in Syria, if things do not escalate beyond what they are today, this morning, this moment, you think it'll be back to the usual in Syria, or we seeing some more escalation going forward? Because, and both Trump and Mattis says that the America will sustain this response until Syria stops chemical weapons use. So they've left it open-ended. So where do things go from here, Ambassador Singh?
So I would interpret that comment as saying that if there is again another, from their point of view, incident of use of chemical weapons, they would react again. But short of that happening, from their point of view, this is a one-shot attempt. Because you'd have also noticed that President Trump has from time to time said that he believes that the engagement in Syria is not very productive from a U.S. point of view. Just a few weeks ago, he had said that the U.S. should get out of Syria. And then I think a lot of people persuaded him that if you do that, then any influence they would have in a post-conflict resolution in Syria would vanish. And so there are reports of US having about 2,000 troops on the ground, which is for them a source of leverage to influence the eventual outcome in Syria, where otherwise Russia and Iran have a very significant presence and influence. So I see the comment of Mattis and President Trump as essentially signaling that in case they see as use of chemicals or chemical weapons again in the context of the conflict in Syria, they would retaliate again. But short of that, I see it as one short attempt at this stage, unless Russia takes certain actions, and Russia has said that there will be consequences, but what those consequences will be, we have to see. And I think the nature of the Russian reaction would probably determine how US and others want to assess that and respond to that.